All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. All right, this is going to be posted for your assignment on Thursday, May 8th. It's due Thursday, May 7th. It's due that day. All right, so it's going to be due at 11:59. And from where we are in class right now, Montauk just walked away. I guess I'm boring him. World War II is over. All right, World War II is over. And that's a good thing, but we need to handle it better than we handled World War I, because what happened after World War I? Very good. We had World War II. We want a World War III. Very good. No. Have we had a World War III? Very good. No. The next war, though, that comes out of World War II is called the Cold War. And the reason why many people think it's called the Cold War is because it never heated up, which is in some ways true and in some ways not true. So what happened? After World War II, Germany gets divided into four pieces. USA, yay. Britain, woo. France, very good. And the USSR, or the Soviet Union, now known as Russia, they get a piece. Boo. Why am I booing the Soviet Union? I'm sure it's lovely there. All right, but ladies and gentlemen, at this point, they emerge as the second world power. And the reason why I cheered France and Britain, because they were also on our side in World War II, is because they believed in capitalism like we do. And the Soviets, they were communist. And that word becomes probably the most dangerous word in the American vocabulary after World War II. Because what happens is France and Britain are good, strong countries, but really two world powers emerge. All right, after World War II. On the one hand, you have us, the good guys, the USA, and on the other hand, all right, you have the USSR, the Soviet Union, and they are communists. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I believe that we are the good guys is not only because I'm American, but because the facts bear that out, ladies and gentlemen. Countries that are divided based on communism and capitalism generally have people jumping over the fence to the capitalist side. They're not trying to sneak into the communist side. Who can think of an example of a country that has that situation today? Very good. Korea. There's North Korea and South Korea. And ladies and gentlemen, after coronavirus clears up and you're allowed to travel again, I do not recommend going to North Korea because it's a crazy, ugly environment of communism where they're not going to treat you at all fairly. So I would avoid that. So that's the attitude. And as this happens, they literally divide Germany. And there's East Berlin and there's West Berlin. And literally, it was your street address. If you lived on 8th Street, they built a wall. And if you were on the east side of the wall, you were communist. And if you lived on 7th Street, and obviously I'm making up these street numbers, you lived on the west side of the wall, you were in the capitalist section. And you were lucky. All right, to prove that the capitalist section was better, we actually airlifted food to East Berlin because they were running out of food after a couple of months of Russian intervention. Or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say Russian, Soviet intervention, because they are not Russia at this point, they are the Soviet Union. So, do you think the two world powers, USA, capitalist, USSR, communist, are going to have an issue with each other? You think there's going to be a fight? Yes, there's going to be a rivalry. When you're going to have a rivalry that may lead to a fight, would it be a good idea to gather up some back for yourself? What do I mean by back? Alliances, friends. All right, so we tried to get all of our capitalist friends to back us, and they try to get all their communist friends, satellite countries, to back them. Whoever has the most friends is going to emerge as the world power. The U.S. wants to be the world power, as you guys saw with the space race. In certain things, the Soviets won, and in certain things we won. We made it to the moon first. They put a satellite up there first. All right, we competed aggressively against them in the Olympics. But the biggest thing is we wanted to be able to match them in military prowess. And how do you match them in military prowess besides scientific advancements? You need to have more friends. So how do we stop them from getting more friends than us? We stop the spread of communism. That becomes known as containment. All right, and our effort to contain communism leads to three very clear, very evident Cold War hot spots. So if somebody tells you the Cold War never heated up, I would say they're wrong. Talk to a Korean War veteran or a Vietnam War veteran, or like somebody who was involved in the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs. all right, that happened during JFK's administration in the 60s. All right, so 3 communist satellite nations. One is Korea. All right, and North Korea is communist, and South Korea is capitalist. And we fight in a place called, we fight in Korea in a war called the Korean War, which is going to be the subject of next week's lessons. All right, then later on in the 60s, another satellite communist nation that's particularly worrisome to us is Cuba. All right, anybody know why Cuba might be particularly worrisome to somebody who lives in the United States? Right, your neighbor, they're close to us. And as we talked about, ladies and gentlemen, your neighbor is having a tremendous impact on your life. Because why? They're close to you, and they can make your life good or bad simply by being around every day. And Cuba, ladies and gentlemen, is way closer to Miami than we are. All right, so we have to really look out for them. All right, and then third place, obviously, is Vietnam. It used to be North Vietnam and South Vietnam. We tried to contain communism there. And we failed. How do I know that? Because there is no North Vietnam anymore. All right, the communists took over the country, all right, in the early 70s, all right, and it might be our most unsuccessful military venture and definitely our most unpopular. All right, more on that next week. So next week, the discussion is going to be Cold War hotspots, 1 being Korea, 2 being Cuba, 3 being Vietnam. All right, and then I'll post another video, surmising that for you, all right, next Thursday. Really quickly, you do have a final exam, all right, the Monday of the last week of school, all right. It is going to be 50 multiple choice questions worth 3 points each for 150 points for the 4th quarter. It is not being scored as a 5th quarter, as I told you, and it's completely open book. So, yeah, it's completely open book. You have a binder at home with Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, Unit 5, Unit 6, Unit 7. Very well organized binder notes, because of course you kept them organized because I told you to. And you have 3/4 of Wilt notebooks with the main ideas of everything that we've talked about this year. And if you keep those 2 things in front of you, along with a magical device that has Google, I don't see any reason why you get any of these questions wrong other than the fact that you don't try. Why wouldn't you try? You're doing all this crazy distance learning. You got one more thing to do to take that final, and maybe we'll compile a review sheet as an assignment that you can have in front of you before it. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, more details on that later. I hope you have an understanding of how World War II ended and how the Cold War gets started. All right, I just talked about 3 places they fought. The 2 superpowers never fought, which is why it's called the Cold War. But still, hundreds of thousands of people died in the combination of the Korean War, the Vietnam War, all right, and the Bay of Pigs invasion and the whole thing with Cuba and Castro, which you guys are going to talk about next week. How'd you guys like that duck and cover video? Interesting, right? Very crazy, strange, paranoid times. I wonder if there's ever been another period of time like that. Oh, now, right. The threat of the atomic bomb is just like the threat of COVID-19. Fear, a lot of uneasiness, a lot of misinformation, a lot of curiosity. And we don't know how it's going to play out. But ladies and gentlemen, at least we're not ducking and covering under our desks, all right? That seems to be a scary situation. And thankfully, we never had to do it. There was no attack from the Russians with a massive bomb. As I said in our last video, there's one country that has done that, and that country is America. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sign off for this week. Thank you for your attention. I'll talk to you next week. Assignments for next week will be posted under the same format. 3 assignments, 20, 30 points each. Due Thursday at 11:59. Reminder, you do have stuff due this week at 11:59. Duck and cover video is included if you haven't watched it yet. Stay safe, everybody. Miss you.